countdown to the Investec Derby on Racing UK, and Graham Cunningham's 20 questions about the great race. First one has to be, Graham, how is the 2012 contest shaping up?
Well, some people are sort of digging a grave for the Derby based on the small entry this year. Please don't. It's a fantastic race, and this year's race has an unusual look because of 1 yard's apparent domination in numerical and quality terms, because there's only one Newmarket runner. There isn't a French runner, but that's not unusual, last year accepted. But we do have an unbeaten Guineas winner who could be a tremendous horse. That's why the field is potentially small. We do have a Dante winner who's really exciting and could still be unbeaten bar a bad run in France. We do have a Lingfield Derby trial winner who is unbeaten and getting better all the time, main sequence, with a really potent finishing kick. So all's not lost as regards the Derby. And if you think that the last rites are about to be read to this race, just have a look at the list of horses who've been beaten in this race, who couldn't win it in years gone by. Haven't got them all, but think Fame and Glory, think Mass Marvel, think Dylan Thomas. All sorts of top quality horses tried to win this race and couldn't. In short, it's still a splendid race. As for why the field might be on the short side numerically, I'm really not sure. Newmarket just hasn't come up with any top quality colts as yet. A potentially good one in Thought-Worthy. Could it be a breeding thing? We know that the prepotent sires as regards derbies, big middle distance horses anywhere, races anywhere these days, are Galileo and Mongeur. I haven't a clue whether they'll all run, but I had a quick gander through the Oaks, the Derby and the Coronation Cup, the 3 big Group 1s this weekend, and 13 of the leading contenders are either by Galileo or Mongeur. So if you haven't got access to those sires, your chance of finding a genuine Derby, Oaks, Coronation Cup horse are diminished considerably. And of course Godolphin haven't managed to find a significant Derby colt this year. So all in all, yes, it is odd, unusual to see a field that could be single figures, but that doesn't mean the quality is greatly diminished. By contrast, the right horses, with the possible exception of Parish Hall, all seem to be there.
And we're going to come on to specific questions shortly about Camelot, but does the fact that it's a smaller field, does that lend itself to say quite simply that that enhances his chance, or that it makes it a little easier that the quality and the cream ought to come to the top?
Well, this is one of the questions for a little while, so I'll save that for the moment. It does reduce the chance of real hard luck stories and traffic problems. So no, let's accentuate the positive for the moment. We have so much to look forward to as regards this race, and I really do not think it's a case of the Derby ailing. It's just a case that the season now is backloaded with any number of top quality events, and the Derby has to compete within that system.
Let's move on to the horse that's got top billing in the build-up to the race, and rightly so. Camelot comes into it as the classic winner, who's supposed to be bred to be winning derbies, or is he a guaranteed stare?
Well, it's a question worth asking, because he's never been beyond a mile and he goes a mile and a half. My answer is I will be astonished if he doesn't see out a mile and a half. By modern standards, his pedigree is pretty much just what you'd look for from a Derby colt. He's by Mongeur, he's out of Tarfar, who was a really good filly for Gerard Butler. This is Camelot on his way down to the start. I'm not sure whether we've got a graphic ready as regards his pedigree, but you can see him going down in a nice, composed, relaxed manner at Newmarket before the Guineas. We'll touch on the nuts and bolts of that performance anon. But in terms of pedigree, have a look at this, Alex. Tarfar, out of a 10-furlong winner, and she put up her best performance for Gerard Butler when she won the Dahlia Stakes over 9 furlongs at Newmarket. Mongeur, before the Guineas, everyone was saying no son or daughter of Mongeur has ever won a top race over a mile at 3-year-olds or older. But look at this list of stock. Authorised, Derby winner. Pomois, Derby winner. Fame and Glory, When Close and See the Stars Derby. Mass Marvel, Ledger winner. Scorpion, Motivator Derby winner. St Nicholas Abbey, Coronation Cup winner at Epsom. Hurricane Run, Papal Bull and Montmartre. In short, Mongeur stamps his stock physically and with a level of quality and stamina that very few stallions could ever match. So the short answer to the question is, if this horse Camelot doesn't stay the Derby trip, I'll be amazed.
So that's that question answered. How about tactics? Are there any way, if you want to take him on or back something against him, can he be beaten? And we'll maybe glance towards the 2,000 guineas or refer to that with a take on it. Will they ride him in a certain way? Will they try and hold him up? Is there an A1 position for Joseph O'Brien to secure? Will his inexperience round Epsom play a part?
All really good questions. I think the smoke will clear slightly when we get the 48-hour declarations tomorrow as regards whether there's going to be one potential pacemaker, two for Coolmore, or who knows, none, which is most unlikely. But the reason I wanted to float this question was because of the interesting and perhaps slightly changing dynamic in the relationship at Coolmore and between father and son. Aidan O'Brien's job, he does a fantastic job in terms of the quality of the horses, but also in handling that relentless pressure from above, from outside and inside of the Ballydoyle compound. It must be amazing day to day what he has to handle in terms of juggling the balls, top quality horses, media questions, targets for horses, and now he's got the added glory and headache of having his son riding the big stars. And we touched on this on Guineas Day when they walked the course at about the halfway point. Aidan said that Joseph turned across to him and said, "Dad, you realise when we pass here I'm going to be nearer last than first." Now to me that represented a young man puffing his chest out and saying, I know what's going on here. And it's also backfired. It backfired on St Nicholas Abbey in the Morsebridge Stakes. Some would say it backfired in the Shima Classic aboard St Nicholas Abbey. So we have this potentially fantastic story of father and son winning the Derby together, and I was in the aftermath of St Nick when he won the Breeders' Cup Turf for Joseph and Aidan, and the elation in that family that day had to be seen to be believed, and I get that completely. But it is an interesting debate as to how the horse will be ridden. One quote from Aidan recently: I've learned not to try and interfere too much, and any dad will understand this when sons start to get strong and willful. But it is a big test for a very young rider, just 19, who's only had 3 rides at Epsom so far.
And there's a different expectation of him now because he's a different rider now than he was back in the autumn. That means there's pressure too.
Being on an odds-on favourite in the Derby, unless you're Lester Piggott, who is sort of impregnable in that regard, brings a great deal of pressure. Smaller field ought to help. Camelot's speed and class will definitely be a major asset, because from all we've seen so far he will absolutely glide along for the first 75-80% of this race. But it is a question worth asking, an angle worth mentioning, because if Camelot finishes strongly and is second, you know what people are going to say.
And you're winding the tape back to 1986, aren't you, folks? I know the 2 words you're saying, dancing brave. Well, let's take a look at the 2,000 guineas, shall we? We'll take a glance at that footage from a half a mile out, and you'll see it at the quarter of a mile from home as well. And that comment that J.O.B. said to Dad in the build-up to the race was definitely borne out by the way it panned out through the first half.
Exactly. You can see 3 groups, 4 on the far side, 3 in the centre initially, and 9 or 10 on the near side. But Joseph chooses to be very patient towards the back of the group on the right hand side, and Camelot justifies that patience and confidence in real style. He didn't scintillate in the way that a Zaphonic or a Nashwan did in the Guineas. He was more like a See the Stars performance, just a very controlled, efficient effort. So far on the far side, Ermival, who didn't do a lot for the form in the Irish Guineas, Trumpet Major, who didn't do a great deal either. But here comes the freeze. We're about halfway, I'd say, and you can see there he's 9th, 10th in that group on the near side with a fair bit to do. Joseph, confidence, that's the point at which he turned to his dad and said, I'm going to be nearer last than first, Dad. And he was. But Camelot had shown that he had a really good turn of foot when he bolted up in the Racing Post Trophy. And his progress through the field from over 3 out now is stealthy. We don't see a great deal of him, but Joseph's perfectly keen to take a lead. In the end, he splits some more experienced horses like Caspaneccia, who did come out and frank this form to a certain extent when he won the German Guineas the other day. Well done to McCabe and family for that. But you can see now about 3rd from right of picture. Freeze it again. He's made good headway. He's probably only 3.5 lengths off the pace at this point. He's taken about 3 lengths out of the leading pack, and he continues to power home. We roll it on, about 2 furlongs to go in the 2,000 guineas, and the dream remains alive, because between horses, Camelot produces that sustained burst of speed. He first of all grabs Caspaneccia, then he grabs Trumpet Major. From then on, he has French 15 in the noseband on the outside to contend with, but he's always just getting the better of that duel. A couple of firm cracks late on. He wins narrowly, but he wins in the style of a horse who could be something special over 1.5 miles.
In a sense, when you watch back on that, was that the perfect ride?
No, I would say no, because I think that he might well have won by a little bit further if he'd been ridden more forwardly, but that's just my opinion. It was a winning ride, and some will say ergo it's perfect. The perfect ride needs to be produced this Saturday, because that promises to be an interesting test of young Joseph O'Brien. A nice piece in the Racing Post on Monday from Joseph O'Brien, but the one little note jarred on a personal point of view, where he said the press are always stirring it up, and some people would say, well, you're stirring it up again here. We're not stirring it up, we're trying to frame the race and the possibilities of the race. And by the way, by and large, Joseph O'Brien has had a very, very smooth ride in the media so far, and long may it continue, because his progress by and large has been impressive.
So we look back on how the Guineas developed tactically. What about the Derby? Is there has to be a different nature in the Derby race because of the configurations of the track. There's the first 3/4 of the mile uphill. There's the potential, even in a field like that, for the draw to play something of a part just in race position initially.
Yeah, I don't think the draw is going to be a significant factor given the size of this weekend's race, but we'll find out tomorrow what the exact field is, and then we can draw conclusions about how hard the Coolmore team is going to go. In the last couple of years, and we'll touch on this again later on, they've split a couple of derbies apart thanks to their number of runners and the quality of runners and their style of running. It's easy to think that Camelot will travel very, very well, and if you look at Coolmore's main Derby hopes in recent years, they've never been too far back coming down the hill. I don't think they'll depart from that scenario this time, and I don't think there'll be a scenario where Joseph turns to Waden passing the walk at the 3 furlong pole and says, Dad, I'm still going to be nearer last than first at this point on Saturday.
Well, let's take a look back at last year's Derby as possibly an indicator of where the Ballydoyle horses might be, and potentially what place in that the pacemakers will roll up, and where maybe Camelot is going to be positioned as well. They always say, Leicester used to say, sort of fight back on the inside.
Well, you'd need a horse. All it takes is one horse, like Memphis, Tennessee last year, to place a very different complexion on the Derby from the one some people imagine. Here, he goes clear. The first one to shake from the pack is stablemate Treasure Beach. And look at Pomoir, left of picture in the dark blue Coolmore colours. Coolmore, but not from Aidan O'Brien's stable. He ends up with a great deal to do. Some people would say Barcelona's ride on Pomoir was the perfect ride. I very much doubt it was. As it happened, the horse got him out of what was potentially a very ticklish situation. Memphis, Tennessee took them along. Treasure Beach had his chance, and look, 100 yards from home, the Derby looks ripe for a major shot. In the end, the best horse in the race gets it done in dramatic fashion. But I just wanted to show that piece of VT to illustrate that what you anticipate in a Derby, what you expect in a Derby beforehand, can be made to look very different by 1 or 2 horses who shake loose coming down that hill.
And who will be making some celebrations, perhaps not as dramatic as those, we'll find out soon enough.